As always, a huge thank you to Starboard, who are once again this season's main sponsors. Starboard has a history of innovation across water sports, starting in 1994 by revolutionising the design of windsurf boards, and they've brought that bang up to date recently, bringing foil windsurfing onto the Olympic stage with their IQ foil package. Starboard got behind stand-up paddleboarding in a huge way in the early days and continue to lead the industry to reduce their environmental impact. Their focus on innovation brought them 7 world champions at the ICF Worlds last year, and all of them were using their Lima paddle range. They continue to improve and innovate their boards and their paddles for all abilities across all flavours of the sport, including adventure. And you can find out more about Starboard through their website, which is linked to in the show notes. Welcome to SUPfm, the sport's leading podcast, where we speak to inspiring people from the fastest growing water sport in the world. Our aim is to help you maximise your own experiences of stand-up paddleboarding and to deepen your love of the water as we chat with people from both inside and outside the SUP world. Every episode is designed to inspire, support and provide you with a deeper immersion through my conversations with leading athletes, scientists, adventurers, TED speakers and New York Times best-selling authors. If you like what we do, there are plenty of ways to support the podcast, including telling your friends, following us on social media. You can even buy me a coffee on Patreon, or you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, which will help others to find us. Whatever you can do, we appreciate it. This episode is part of our Yukon 1000 mini-season, where we do a deep dive over several episodes into the ultimate adventure race challenge and the longest paddle race on the planet, where we'll talk to the race organisers, teams and individual paddlers in the lead up, in the start town, just ahead of the race and after the finishing line, closely following what many describe as a truly epic odyssey of a race. Brilliant. Well, welcome back to the third of our Yukon 1000 episodes. And in this one, we feature 2 out of the 4 SUP teams competing in this year's race. And we're speaking to them well ahead of them shipping out west. So we're joined by Martin and Kim from the Renegade Moose Chasers team and by Craig and Skip from Team Shac, both teams from the UK. So welcome to SUPfm, guys.
Hey, hi.
So if our listeners have heard the previous episodes, they'll be familiar with the form of the race and with your story, Craig. But what I wanted to do as we get sort of closer to the start of the race is just to do a little deep dive into how you're approaching things as a team, because this is not a solo effort. You can't do it on your own. And from speaking to other illustrious competitors like Bart de Zwart and the race director, it's clear that the team dynamic and how you work together is probably the most crucial part of the whole event. So coming to the Renegade Moose Chasers, first of all, how did you first get together as a team for the Yukon 1000? Just tell us your romantic how you met story.
Well, we're still to get married, but we haven't got that far yet. How did it come about, Kim? Because I think you floated the idea to me.
I did, yes, I did. Yeah, just.
I think it was
basically. Do you fancy doing it?
I think it was last year, and Kim and I were doing quite a bit of work with each other in my business, where we were doing some multi-day, overnight adventure type stuff, and we were taking groups out. And then I think that's when it came available that you could apply for getting into the Yukon. And he said, "Did you fancy doing it?" And I'd heard of the Yukon, but I'd heard of the Quest. To be honest, I knew a lot of people that had done, or some people that had done the Quest, like JHV, Joe Hamilton Vale. I've had chatted with her quite a few times about it. And then I looked into the 1000, and I went, "That'll be fun." So it was Kim's idea, asked me to do it, which I said yes, and we put an application in. So it was sometime last year. Yeah. No massive thought process went into it.
Well, that's usually the best for an endurance event, isn't it? Just don't think about it. Just go on. I mean, all of my long distance stuff I've done has been after conversations at a pub. So that's been my creative hub for all of this sort of stuff. And Craig and Skip, you've got a long-standing working relationship, haven't you? But when did Yukon 1000 get floated? And it must be some time ago, because you've been trying to compete for quite some time, haven't you?
Conversation in a pub.
There you go. I knew one of the teams wouldn't disappoint me.
In 1896 during the gold rush.
There you go. So obviously the teamwork is something we want to get into, but could you just tell us a little bit about your respective backgrounds and how your experience sort of complement each other? Because it's very much teamwork. It's very much sort of balancing of skills. Where would you say the balance of experience and skills lie between you two?
I would say our balance of experience comes from various angles, actually. Craig is incredibly on point with things like personal fitness, nutrition, planning and organising, and has done things out on the water over the years. And I've done a little bit more practical woodland-based stuff and a bit of paddling here and there as well.
So tell me about your bushcraft skills, because that's obviously a skill set which is absolutely essential for this race. How did you get into that?
I was a scout for years when I was younger. That sparked my interest in bushcraft and a bit of survival. And then I became a scout leader years later, so it kind of stuck with me. And then I based my current business a little bit around that experience out in the woods.
And how many fingers have you got left? Because I know that when you're working with axes and knives, it can be a little bit risky.
They're all there. We're all good.
They're all there. Fantastic. Well, that shows the level of competence there. So, you passed us on that one. And how about the Moose Chasers? Where would you say the balance of your skills lie in terms of, your team dynamic?
Well, I mean, Kim, Kim's done probably an awful lot more foreign exploration stuff than I have. I mean, if you say what you've done in the past,
Yeah, most of mine has been sort of the long distance cycling on my own. So, that's basically my thing. I've never actually done anything like the Yukon on a board or anything, but I've got a good few miles under my belt on my old mountain bike.
So what exactly did you do?
My first cycle tour was around Thailand, which was more like a bloody big holiday. And then I did China, trying to get into Tibet, which wasn't successful. So I ended up cycling back through Laos and Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. I've cycled the Great Divide and I've cycled England to Afghanistan on a bike on my own. So that's my little adventures.
Little adventures. That is quite impressive. It puts my John O'Groats to Land's End into the shade there. Although I'm sure the weather conditions were slightly better, or certainly slightly warmer where you were.
Yeah.
But there's lots you can carry across into an endurance event like the Yukon. What would you say is transferable from those long distance trips? Because it's all about self-reliance, and there's no predictable Tesco's every 5 miles or so, is there?
That's true. So I think it's just I think the Great Divide was a real good trip, and it's going to be sort of similar. I've learned to be bear aware and things like that. So the Great Divide, definitely a lot of comparisons, I suppose, to this Yukon.
Yeah, and teamwork, obviously, and communication are crucial in a race like this. And I guess the most challenging moments, and I'm sure you thought about it, is when you're sort of particularly fatigued, sleep deprived. I'm not really selling it to you. I hope you're aware of all of this, by the way, guys. And obviously that can be challenging on the team dynamic. So Team Shac, I know you guys have been tested already because you've had a few false starts on this one, but have you considered an approach to manage things if you get into a particularly critical time, or are you just kind of laid back and go with the flow and know enough about each other to just go with it?
I think, yeah, we are that kind of laid back, but I think in a way that we acknowledge that at some point one of us might hit an up and one will be on a low, and you just hope that the lows are not at the same time. And I think, it's like a sine wave, isn't it? You're going to have highs and lows, both of you are, and you're going to go through different stages depending on just the kind of person you are. So I think it's just recognizing, I think what we've got is we can recognize when someone needs maybe a bit of a pick-me-up, whether someone maybe just needs a bit of time alone, whether someone, I think dark humor is also great. I mean, I think, humor can make a lot of things disappear, and finding the funny things in extreme situations as well. So I think we're very comfortable that we know there's going to be times when I'm going to shout at Skip and moan at him, and he's going to be off with me. And then we're going to burst out laughing about it because we've hallucinated on something on the bank or something. Yeah. So I think it's just comfortable with each other, knowing we're going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And you've kind of been tested, haven't you, already? I guess it must have been really disappointing last year. I mean, how did you feel about that, Skip, where he was, completely selfish and got COVID without your permission? What were your emotions going on at that point?
Well, clearly I wanted to kill him. We spent a lot of time getting there. Yeah, at the actual moment of kind of finding out, you don't really think about it. The first thing you do in any kind of decent team is rally around one another and just make sure that Craig was all right. That was my primary kind of thought process, and then my secondary process was, how do we turn this from being a bit of a shitstorm into a really good adventure? And we were fortunate enough to do that, which kind of gave us that period of time over there to be a part of that place and those people, which I think was, the best kind of a bad situation. It was much later on, I think, that it hit us pretty hard when we got back. But when we were there, it was kind of, no, this is just what it is. It is what it is. It became a favourite saying of ours, and we got on with it, and actually we turned a very dark thing into a really bright thing.
And just same question for the Moose Chasers there. Presumably you spend a lot of time out on the water together. Have you been out in any environments or situations which are sort of tested, or have you thought about how you're going to communicate when you're both, completely knackered?
Well, I mean, I think it's a funny one because, I mean, we've spent a lot of time with each other certainly over the last year and a half, working with each other, on, with paying customers and having different roles with that, and having to think on our feet and having to react to situations. When we're out on the water, we tend to not chat an awful lot, to be fair. We just kind of crack on. We both know where we need to go and when we need to do it by, and all the rest of it. We know what kit we've got, and we tend to really compliment each other on the water, without having too much in the way of communication. I mean, Kim was talking about his background. My background isn't anything like that. Mine's more like Craig's. It comes more from like a physical background. I'm 52 this year. I've been a personal trainer since 16. I've never done anything. I've done Ironman racing. I've done 24-hour mountain biking. I've done endurance swimming. But my races tend not to go too much longer than that because I've always been all right at them. I've never spent too much time. So I personally don't know how it's going to affect me because I've never done I've done a 24-hour mountain bike race, and that I know how that felt. Now, to do that in another, 8 to 10 times, I've got no idea how I'm going to react. Hopefully I'm a little bit older and wiser, and I'm a bit more relaxed about it, and I won't end up throttling him at night in his tent or something. But I think that's part of the journey, Simon. Part of this journey for me personally, going to the Yukon and that's what I put on my application, was to find out who I am a little bit, and to test myself a little bit. And I am a very, very small pin in a very, very big world, and just I want to soak all that one up and see what it does to me, to be honest, see how I come out the other side. So it's going to be really interesting.
Me and Craig had a chat about on this subject on the previous episode, but I'm quite interested from the Moose Chasers. Obviously the application form and the statements and so on, and the interview is all kind of part of the process. What were your gaps when you had that chat with John?
Well, it was funny, the chat we had with John. I mean, when I put my gaps down on paper, my gaps on paper were probably not having too much in the way of experience of what Kim's had. So Kim, obviously cycling the divide and around trying to get to Afghanistan, he's been very, very self-supported, where I've done an awful lot of shorter stuff, even though it's endurance stuff, Ironman and stuff. I've been able to cope in that very small environment, but he's been able to cope in a much bigger, more lonely environment. So I think that was probably going to be a challenge for me. I don't quite know how I'm going to cope with. Sorry, there we go. I don't quite know how I'm going to cope with that time, because I've never had to have that time, So that's going to be really, really interesting. And, I put on that application that's what I want to get out of it. I want to experience what this is like. I want to hurt a little bit. I want to become uncomfortable, because I think through being
I think that'll happen.
Well, I think it will.
I don't think that's even a choice.
That's
coming, my man. That's coming.
It's going to give me exactly what it says on the tin, then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
a means to empty the tank. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's so much to cope with and manage mentally and physically on the journey. I mean, one of them is boredom. I don't know whether there's a key chatter in each team. I think I can probably work out. The other alternative I know that a lot of teams have used is a waterproof speaker. So I'm just wondering whether or not you're going down that route. Skip looks like a Taylor Swift fan to me. So potentially, are any of you going down that route in terms of playlists, or are you just going to listen to the sound of the moose on the banks of the Yukon?
Well, I think the biggest challenge, being technical, is, do you know how difficult it is to get a waterproof speaker full of music when you're not allowed to take a phone or any electronic device? Such iPods don't exist anymore. There are the phones. Phones aren't allowed on the race. They're in tamper-proof bags.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so there are ways.
I can sing.
It was harder to work out. Skip can sing. It was harder to work out how to cram 2,000 songs onto an SD card that sit in Apple Music than it was to work out how to set up a GPS unit that's going to take us 1,000 miles down a river. So I think that we have got a waterproof speaker, but it's
you've got nothing to plug into it. Oh well, you can amplify Skip's singing then. But I mean, what I was angling to is that I know a podcast which has got over 100 episodes that will probably get you at least through the first couple of days.
Simon, if you can send them to me on an SD card, I'll be grateful.
Excellent. Okay, well done. Right. So basically, there are kind of two races within a race. Obviously, you've got the one on the water, but you've also got the recovery, which is really critical for recharging your batteries. In terms of your team, have you thought about how you're going to manage that 6 hours on the shore? Because the second you hit the shore, the clock starts, and you absolutely need to have your personal admin absolutely nailed down to get the most out of it. Is that something, Team Shac, is that something that you've been working on?
Hunting.
Yes, we have a plan.
And no, we're not sharing it.
Right, I will go no further, because just to remind everyone listening, this is a race and we don't want to divulge any trade secrets. So
I'll tell you what, I think that's an interesting point though, as in like it is a race, and understandably, obviously, but it is a race, but above all, we want all the teams, including our fellow competitors, to do well and be safe. And there's parts where it's great to chat over things and ideas, around just logistics and what might help each other. And then there's little things that are kind of like things that are, your strategy that either good or bad, or going to work or not going to work. So yeah, but I think the ultimate thing is it is a race, but we are all there, I think, just egging each other on and want to see everyone succeed and cross that line in any way they do with any plan.
Absolutely.
So Team Shac aren't sharing anything on that one then. How about the Moose Chasers? Any plans for those 6 hours?
I've got a plan. We're going to get off the boards. We're going to do some stuff, and some food, and then we're probably
controversial.
Yeah,
you've seen my list.
Yeah, it's that's what do you need to be doing, Simon? Let's face it. You've been paddling all day. What do you need to be doing? You need to be eating some stuff, sleeping some, and waking up in time to go again the next day, feeling a bit more refreshed. So that's the basics of it, isn't it? That's what you need to be doing. So
you do. It's how quickly, and then it's about breaking camp and getting back out again as quickly as possible.
One of us plays mummy, one of us plays daddy, and we have jobs.
Craig has to poo twice every morning, so I've got to wait for him anyway.
And that can be cut.
So I think, someone sets up the tent, someone does the cooking. It's kind of, the demarcation, isn't it? It's people having a particular task.
Skip and Craig now wondering which one's going to do the cooking and which one's setting up the tent.
And you are concluding what?
Well, there was a prospect of me asking loads of tactical questions, but I'm going to have to discard, I think, 16 pages of my my interview prep here. And why don't we move on to? I do have some more team questions later on, but just in terms of training. So, what's your training approach been, the Moose team, in terms of sort of preparation up to the Yukon? You're looking pretty casual. You're looking pretty ripped. Biceps and all of that sort of stuff. You've obviously been putting in a bit of time, but how have you structured that training?
Go on then, Kim.
Well, we've done several overnighters, just with the kit that we are taking, and really just getting used to the boards. And like I say, getting the camp set up and packing away quickly.
I mean, that has actually been an interesting one, because we only got our boards that we're using not that many weeks ago. And also where we've got to paddle. I mean, I was actually doing a race at the head of the Dart a few weeks back, and I was racing, and I saw Skip coming down the river the other way with full kit, and.
I'd already finished, Martin. I was heading home.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, that's obviously how it's going to be. But so I know he's been out training because I saw him. We only got these boards, and we've loaded them up, and we had 30 kilos of weight on there. And what's been very interesting with training for us is where we live, because we live on the Norfolk Broads, and everybody has this very romantic view of the Norfolk Broads. Craig knows the Broads. I don't know if you've been up this way, Skip, but I've raced Craig. We've raced each other in a race up on the Norfolk Broads, and it is not easy paddling because it's tidal and it's flat. It's windy. It's always windy. So when you're pushing we're taking inflatables. When you're taking an inflatable board, which is it's not as fine cut as a nice designed hardboard hull, all the rest of it. And then you're sticking 30 kilos of weight onto it, and then you've got wind and tide against you, and you're 50 Ks in. That is hurting. That is hurting, and I'm just hoping to God that it's easier on the Yukon than doing that, because that has been really hard. I mean, for me personally, I'm a pretty physical guy, but I have been absolutely smacked sideways doing 50, 60 Ks on the Broad on an inflatable with kit. It's been hard work, and that's been our strategy, really, just going out doing 50K paddles with an overnight thrown in, testing kit and seeing how we go.
And how about you, Skip? Are you sort of getting fit out on the Yukon? You've had a bit of a taste of it anyway, haven't you, out there? I know you and Craig had a little bit of time on the water when you're there, but what's been your approach?
It's a good question. I think having been there, we had to learn quite a lot of respect for that environment and that river. In some respects, we've got the benefit of having seen it and how powerful it is and how fast it runs in places. But it also, having seen it, reminds you that it's a powerful beast. So I think having been there, my approach to my training definitely changed. I knew that I had to up the ante. You know, when we first went to go and do the Yukon, or we were training for the Yukon, we were both pretty fit when it got cancelled and then cancelled again. And then last year, I think I probably should have done more. I would have got through it, but I felt like I should have done more. So when I came back and we decided that we were going to go again, I've just made sure I've moved a lot more than I was before.
And have you mixed it up in terms of cross training, or has it all been paddling for you?
Yeah, no, I've really mixed it up. I don't want to be bored of paddling when I get to go and have to paddle 1,000 miles. I've done very little paddling, actually. I've done a lot of other kind of fitness. I know I can paddle all right, so I don't need to practice that bit. I just need to be physically fit and injury free, and that was my goal, really.
And Craig, we have already talked a bit about your approach, but just sum it up in terms of building endurance.
Yeah, and I think as Skip said, it's like I probably went the first couple of years training over COVID. I took it really seriously. I mean, I was heart rate monitors, training peaks, running, paddling distances, and then this time around, I've definitely chilled out more and realised. Well, with my PT background, I knew this is a very low intensity, steady slog. It's about being supple, being injury free. Knowing your body, knowing when you need to deal with certain niggles. And so my approach this last year is, I'll go out and do things like I'll go out and do a 60, 70K paddle just randomly. I'm fine. I have these weird things. I like to set myself silly little challenges to test more my mind than anything else. But I hate running, so I'll go out and I'll run a marathon, and it'll be ugly and it won't be fast, but I do it to get the noggins, just to get used to, because I'll do it purposefully and run past my house 3 times on the route to give me many opportunities to stop. So I think my approach has been, I think as Skip said, like having seen it, we know what we're dealing with. That's both a positive and a negative, because having this much time as well to think about stuff, you can overthink stuff. Sometimes I feel envious for obviously the Moose Chasers that have had a 6-month window, guys. Is it 6 since you got accepted?
I think 6 months.
Yeah. And it's like first I was like, shit, it's taken us. Oh, sorry, beep. It's taken us. We've had 4 years. They've got 6 months, but actually, it's quite interesting how, as humans, we're incredibly clever at filling the time we have to do a job. So if you said to me, you've got 8 weeks to get ready for the Yukon 1000, somehow we would make it happen, and we would get there and we'd do it. If you say you've got 4 years to do the Yukon 1000. On the end of the 4th year, we'll just be finishing off most of those tasks. We have. So I think
you're absolutely right. I mean, that's something called Parkinson's law. You can look at that up on Wikipedia. 1950s economist produced that the workload expands into the time available for it. The law.
Every day's a school day.
So yeah, in terms of skills, there's a variety of different environments there. You got Lake Labarge, isn't it? The flat, potentially a headwind.
Why would you go and say that?
I'm just leading it into the question, Skip. So you've already done that. That's the Norfolk Broads, isn't it? But you've got Five Finger Rapids and so on. Have you done any sort of training, Moose Chasers, to model those sorts of more extreme experiences that you're going to have on the water?
Plenty of boats on the water. That's as near as
you can. I mean, on the Norfolk Broads, you just take your life in your hands with all the cruisers on there. When they rent out a 40-foot cruiser, they get shown the steering wheel and the kettle, and that's about it. And you take your life in your hands on the water. But, no, I mean, I'm a trainer with the Water Skills Academy, so I do a lot of teaching. And my sort of CPD stuff personally is that I've done expedition training with the Water Skills. And that included river rapids, and I think that's an interesting one, because when you're going down, even if it's like on a grade 2 rapid, grade 2 leading into a 3 perhaps, when you look down into that water, that board is moving. That board is moving, and your judgments that you have to make have to be made very, very, very far in advance. So you don't have any time to be casual about that when you're moving on that sort of speed of water. You have to be looking miles ahead. You're planning your route. You're planning your maybe little vantage points, because you might want to stop to have it to scout it out before you go. So running rapids is actually, I've done a few of them. There's a few I didn't do because they were way outside of my skill zone, but that's an interesting experience. 5 finger, I'm in a weird way really looking forward to it. So I've seen it on the TV, I've seen it on videos and stuff like that. Yeah, if the whole of the Yukon 1000 was like 5 finger rapids, I wouldn't be going. But as it's around about 300 meters or a bit more, I'll go. But what about you?
Skills riding rapids, non-existent, to be honest.
Well, hunker down and go the right route. How about you, Skip? Have you had any whitewater experience? I guess you saw 5 finger rapids, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. It's huge, fellas. It's so big you wouldn't believe it. Yeah, no, it's it's quite a thing when you're actually there. Yeah, I've done a bit. I spent quite a lot of time in Scotland, water up there. I've actually got a bit of a surfing background as well, and paddle surfing, so I think that plays in as well. But like Martin says, it's all about kind of looking through it rather than looking at it. And if you've got the skill to do that, then you should be okay.
I think the skill there, Skip, is just don't go for the upward V.
Yeah. I don't think you get that much choice in the 5 fingers. It just kind of throws you at it.
Yeah. Just hang on. I think you'll get spat out the other end.
And don't forget about the rapids that follow the 5 fingers, because I think a lot of people focus on 5 fingers and then forget that there's another one straight after. But that's going to be an adrenaline charge.
Craig, am I right in thinking that's Rink Rapids?
That is indeed. That's Rink Rapids. And
stick
right and you'll be fine. Stay right.
Stay right, yeah.
There you go. You've studied your maps.
That's going to be the thing, isn't it? What do we do here? Oh, stay right. That's it. Yeah.
River right.
Apart from the left.
River right. Just stick to it.
River right.
There you go. We'd like to thank Baltic Life Jackets for returning as episode sponsors this season. Baltic designed and developed their SUP Elite PFDs to solve 2 key problems facing stand-up paddlers. The slimmed-down front panel makes it easier to climb back on your board, and the ergonomic cutaways around the arms accommodate the SUP stroke, allowing you to paddle freely without restriction to the point that you hardly notice you're even wearing it. The SUP Elite also incorporates storage and the option to add a hydration pack, which is perfect for the summer. So check out the SUP Elite and the SUP Pro PFDs at your local stockist or at supfmpodcast.com/Baltic. Looking to take your performance to the next level? Then look no further than Ocean Pacific. Introducing the Strike Series VRX, the ultimate SUP paddle designed for maximum power and efficiency. Its firm flex shaft optimizes energy transfer for efficient paddling. Its double dihedral blade ensures an unrivaled grip on the water, boosting your surfing, racing and touring performance. Ocean Pacific sponsors and promotes UK surf and race culture, supporting athletes and adventure racing teams, including the Shac team competing in this year's Yukon 1000. And they're committed to providing professional grade equipment at an accessible price. Visit oceanpacific.com today to explore their range of high performance paddles, hardware and apparel. And the links to all of our sponsors are in the show notes. So moving on to equipment, Martin, you mentioned that you hadn't had your board for too long. Just run us through your kit selection and paddle selection for this. Yeah,
so one of the first things I did actually when I knew we'd been accepted was like, okay, what we doing it on? Because don't get me wrong, I'm a hard board fanatic. I love my hard boards. I've got a lot of them. I ride a lot of them. But there is also a place for inflatables. And I learnt that when I was guiding in Scotland, because when you're in Scotland, the terrain isn't that very nice. You can throw inflatables around and they tend not to get holes in them often, fingers crossed, So I went down the route of looking for an inflatable board that we could use. And I realised that the boards that we use for our expeditions here in the UK are Currock. We use Currock 13-foot Explorer boards because they can carry an awful lot of weight. They're incredibly stable, and I've paddled them in some quite big stuff. Paddled those up in Scotland, and they'll ride pretty much anything. So I contacted Andy at Curok because although they're absolutely brilliant boards for what they do, there isn't a board on the market that fitted what I wanted. Like the Curoks are the closest that I've come to of an off the shelf, but it didn't have the stuff that I wanted on it in the places I wanted it. So I contacted Andy and I just asked him if he'd be in favour of helping us out with a prototype board. And thankfully he was all over it. He said, totally exciting. He basically gave me a blank sheet of paper and said, you tell me what you want and how you want it, and we'll get it made. And I thought, amazing, absolutely amazing. So I came up with this blank sheet of paper and I wrote a whole list of stuff that I wanted, the size, the shape, what type of D-rings I wanted, where I wanted them. Did I want carbon stringers? Did I want, whatever it was I wanted, Andy made it happen on a board. And then we got these 2 prototype boards through, and absolutely brilliant. We've now had a couple of changes. We've got a second lot of prototype boards come through. In fact, I'm taking mine out tomorrow. Few changes. That's how supportive Andy's been with Curok, so can't fault him in the slightest. Other equipment, paddle wise, we're sticking with ZRE because that's a paddle that I've been using for 10 years. I've had an association with ZRE for 10 years. I don't think, in my personal view, they're amazing paddles. They're handmade in the USA. Totally great bits of kit. We've got some support from Peak UK now, which is lovely. We've got some nice equipment that we can, clothing from Peak UK. Food from Firepot are helping us out with some food, which is amazing. And we've also got some help from Basecamp Foods as well, because there's Firepot do a couple of bits that Kim doesn't like, like squirrel or whatever.
I love squirrel.
Oh, you like squirrel?
You love squirrel.
That's why I'm taking him to Yukon, because he's the sort of bloke that will pick up something dead.
It's the veggie stuff, I know.
Yeah, he'll pick up something dead on the side of the Yukon and turn it into a nice casserole.
Hopefully we're all camping together that night and we'll have some.
Yeah. So kit-wise, and I've got a bunch of stuff sitting on the table here that's driving that insane because I keep needing to look at it. But no, we've been very fortunate with the people that, our supporters. We're ready to rock and roll, I think. Yeah, as far as kit.
And I know you've had a similar experience, haven't you, Craig? Because you've got a board supply you've been working with. You're over in Sweden recently, weren't you? Just tell us a bit about your kit and the sort of support you've had from suppliers.
Yeah, so I think we've had some fantastic support. Obviously, the boards, Easter, Swedish brand. They kindly supplied us with our boards last year, and the Dutch girls also had the same boards. So we know they're tried and tested, and they're fantastic, and they've given me support not just in that race, but also in other races as well. SUPfm Cities, I'm on one of their carbon boards, and a new exciting board coming for the SUPfm Cities this year. Paddles, I'm with Ocean Pacific, as is Skip. Good friend Enzo has looked after us for many years, I think, hasn't he, Skip? He's been a great support and advocate.
One of the bedrocks of what we've done from the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got fixed shaft and sort of backup 3-piece paddles for that. Recently teamed up with Mustang Survival, a Canadian outfitter for Marine, who at the time we didn't really know how big they were. Managed to get their support for some kit that we'd seen that we liked and like it was going to fit our requirements. And subsequently, after getting their support, saw that they basically supply the Navy SEALs, the US Coast Guard, and so that was great to have them on board. Expedition Foods have been feeding us calories for 4 years. The amount of food we've brought and then failed, and then had to pull out of the race and had to eat. So we know all the foods there, but they've been great. Who have I forgotten, Skip?
Precision Hydration.
Of course, Precision Hydration down in Bournemouth. So Andy Blow and the team down there. They're great for actually anyone doing anything endurance related and wants to look at things like your electrolytes, sodium levels. I mean, the guys down there are incredible. The guys and girls, their science knowledge and their background, I rate it for anything. If you're a runner, paddler, go online, incredible blog articles. They're incredibly knowledgeable. You can contact them. You can do a free consultation for sodium tests. So they've been really supportive as well for that sort of stuff. And as I found out, I'm a very salty sweater. I used to cramp up a lot. I used to cramp up so much. There's another story we won't go into now on that, about some of our original training paddles, where I literally had rigor mortis. I couldn't move.
It was hysterical.
And through their support as well. I mean, I just sorted all that out as well. So, and I apologise if I've forgotten anyone else.
Nordisk.
We've had a lot of support. Nordisk as well, for intense, and basically, we've got an office. One of my rooms in my office is a bit like a goods in, goods out for Yukon. It has been for the last 2 years. It's like Amazon come, put boxes on the side. It gets goods in, it gets checked, goes into a pile of, yes, we could use this. No, that ain't going to work. And I've literally still got piles of gear of that's what we're taking. That's what I'm still looking at. That's what has just come in. And I think this comes back to the whole thing is you can overthink it. We've had too much blooming time. What we had last year was 97% there. But anyway, so thank you to everyone that supported us. And if we've missed anyone, we can put it in the show notes down here. Is that what you do?
That's exactly. Although it's mostly an audio podcast, so pointing doesn't work quite as well. But what you say about electrolytes particularly, and that's a really key one, as you say, and particularly around sleep. So again, I've got a very poor example in comparison to Kim's experience, but, multi-day cycling over 100 miles a day, I found that my metabolism was shunted up so far that when I went down to sleep, it was just, there was just a sort of a body shape pool on the sheets every night. So getting that sleep is dependent, particularly on magnesium and getting enough down you. So, I don't know, Moose Chasers, whether you've got an electrolyte strategy, but if you haven't, I'd definitely recommend you get one, because it makes you, I mean, you'll know this anyway, Martin, from Ironman. And in fact, you're a professional, aren't you? This is where I met you first of all, wasn't it? You were. It was all about sports nutrition. What am I saying? I'm teaching you to suck eggs.
Yeah, my background is a performance endurance sports nutritionalist specialist. There we are. So
there you go.
So and another supporter of us is Torque, TORQ, from Wales. I used to work for them for about 9 years. So when it comes to endurance fueling, and that's what they specialize in, that's what I did when I was with them. So we got electrolyte with carbohydrate, of course, Simon, because you can't have one without the other.
You taking chips?
Hey,
you taking chips?
Yeah, we're taking chips and bananas. A whole
good
box.
idea.
And a couple of loaves of bread as well, Martin.
Yes.
That's the other.
Oh, yes.
Sourdough bread, Simon.
Well, I tried it once and it wasn't a success. But so let's just complete the nerdery on equipment, because we do like to get into a bit of nerdery on kit. So in terms of your boards, what are the dimensions, Martin, or is it so custom made that it's a special size? Is it long glide? Have you gone for?
Well, I'd like to say it's 14 foot and 26 wide at one end and 3 inches at the other. No, it's 14 by 28. So not. I mean, the Shac's boards are a little bit longer and a little bit narrower. So with that, I'm guessing volume might be about the same. I don't know. In fact, we don't know what the volume is on our boards because they're prototypes. So they float, which is great. Which is very useful. But yeah, 14 by 28 by 6 inches. And the interesting fact, I suppose, with our board is that there is no rocker. That's going to be interesting through the rapids. I have a feeling that might have been a mistake. It could be helpful. I mean, when you look at there's a new when you look at starboard, Simon, the new starboard, I think it's the inflatable Sprint. That has zero rocker as well on it. Something I noticed when I was doing your job with Sarah from SUP Junkie at Cardiff.
Doing it very well.
Thanks. Yeah, we're a great team. as long as I do as I'm told. So,
well, there you go. As long as you understand that, that's the main thing.
But no, so I noticed that this board had no rocker on it because this starboard is, super flat, and it had the cable on the nose cone, and it was pulling it super flat on the water. And I looked at it afterwards, and it is. You put it on the flat ground, it's absolutely dead flat. My carbon flat water race board, I've got an NSP Ninja. Again, virtually no rocker on it, end to end, waterline, really good. So when we got these Cure Rocks in, I thought, okay, well, we'll give them a go, and pleasantly surprised on that basis, So looking forward to putting them to the test. 28 because we can carry a bit of luggage and I'm not that stable. So it gives me a bit more support.
I don't think any of us are that stable. That's why we're doing this, right?
So the Shac team, I don't know whether you're at liberty to share any dimensions there, Craig, whether that's...
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so we are on 17.3 by 26 with a rocker. And I think over 1,000 miles, I think it's about having something that you're used to and comfortable with rather, if you look at like race boards or things over a 10K or different, it's like, yes, there's tweaks and there's things, but I think it's like finding something that you're comfortable with. There's going to be parts where it's going to excel, and there's going to be parts where it might not be as good. But I don't think there's any perfect board for the 1,000 miles. But I think the perfect board is the board you're the most comfortable on. We've been lucky to have these for 18 months or so. We've paddled them on the Yukon. We've obviously Ella and Yannicka have raced them on the Yukon, so we know they're going to make it to the end. So that's great. But yeah, so they're 17.3, 26 wide. Couldn't tell you the volume. With a rocker, a small kind of fin on the front. That's a nose fin for tracking.
We got one of those.
Yeah, I think it's probably yours probably has more effect with the flat waterline. I mean, to be honest, unless you've got a lot of weight on the front, it does very little perhaps. I mean, but yeah, it goes to a pintail. We've put all the mounting points on ourselves. Brian at Blue Chip, thank you, Brian. He's done a fantastic job of putting our D rings on in all the places we need D rings. We've done quite a lot of kilometres on them, and we're happy with them. And yeah, looking forward to.
Yeah, exciting times. So finally, just to come back to the team element of this may make or break these relationships. I'm aware of my responsibility here. So Kim, before I ask you about Martin's strengths, I'm going to give it a go, because me and Martin met about, 8 years ago, I think, at the Water Sports Festival in Hayling Island, which wasn't exactly like the Yukon. There are a few more beer tents at Hayling. Martin was on the stand next to mine. I was selling my SUP where you were selling your nutrition, weren't you? And at the end of it, we built a good relationship in that I could sell his stuff with exactly the same patter as he used, and he could do the same on my side. I think, in terms of Martin's strength, Kim, you can disagree with this if you like.
Oh.
So I'd say, endlessly positive, unfeasibly energetic, and very capable. So that's how I would sum him up, Kim. Now, you can agree or disagree with me on any of those.
I agree, actually. Yeah, very enthusiastic, and more than capable, I think.
Handy from morale. And Martin, same for Kim. What would you say his strengths are and what he adds to the team?
Well, given that he lived in Thailand and he's lived with Thai boxers for like 3 years, I reckon he's going to sort some bears out if they come near the tent. No, I mean, I think what Kim brings to the table is the ability to keep going, and I saw that at the Great Glen last year. I've got this amazing. It doesn't do good radio, but I've got this great picture of Kim at the end of the Great Glen, sitting there with the biggest gash, biggest hole in his head, with blood pouring out over his eyes. He just looked like looked like some kind of Scottish heathen from back in the day. He's he just cracks on. He could have blood pouring out. I mean, he got chucked off a board on the Glen, climbed back on, the board hit him, and he will suffer. And I'm not into suffering too much, but it's nice to see somebody suffer because you can go, well, I don't want to go there. but he's capable, very capable at digging in and cracking on, and that's what I like. That's what I love.
Yeah. So there may well be a little bit of suffering involved in the Yukon, Martin. I might be wrong about that, but certainly an ability. And Craig, just talk to me about Skip.
So his strong points are, I think he's just so chilled, and it's like you need someone to be calm and he's just got this presence where things just won't bother him. The important things will, but he won't panic. He will just work things through. And also, like, if he sees you in a bad way, he just kind of knows when to and when not to kind of get involved. It's like he's got an incredible paddle stroke, and I've said that, and I hate telling him this, but like like as he said earlier, he hasn't paddled much in his training because, like he says, he doesn't need to learn how to paddle. He keeps himself fit. But we'll go out for some training paddles, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've been out paddling, I've been racing, other stuff, and like try not to show him that I'm really struggling to keep up, and I'm looking at his stroke and his cadence, and I'm like, what is this man? It's like, so I think he's a strong paddler without just by his technique and his ability, which is an excellent thing for a 1,000-mile race. So yeah, I think that's the two traits there is like he's a strong paddler, and we just have a good laugh together. We find things funny together. It's like I think never underestimate the dark humour. Even like what happened last year of us having to scratch after I got ill, like that week, those couple of weeks were so tough. But there was always the dark humour and laughing about the situation because I think we're both. I'm answering for myself. I think Skip is very optimistic. We always know that it is what it is. It will be what it will be. Things, I say, happen for a reason, but things have a habit of working themselves out if you just keep smiling.
Exactly. Keep grinding on. And finally, last but not least, Skip, what does Craig add to the team?
I'm just trying to hold back the tears at the moment. I think the better question in this situation is what doesn't Craig bring to the team? He touched on humour, and humour has been our greatest strength throughout the journey we've been on so far. Craig is one of the most determined and committed people I think I've ever met, almost to a fault. And that I don't think he would take that as a criticism anymore. I think he'd take that as a positive nowadays. He is incredibly organised, incredibly on point with everything that really matters in the organisation of doing something like this. So what he brings to the team is it all really so far. We haven't really seen what I bring to the team yet. I'm incredibly lucky to have him as my paddle partner. I wouldn't do it with anybody else.
Wow, that's fantastic. We're all a bit teary now, aren't we? After all that, look, guys, I'm super jealous of your adventure ahead of you. It's going to be absolutely incredible. I hope you get everything out of it that you want to get out of the race. Safe journey over there, and looking forward to catching up with you after the race. Maybe we can do this again. Craig.
Can I say one last thing? I think it is incredible for the UK SUP scene. We have 2 UK teams going out doing this. And I think hopefully, like I said earlier, it's a race, but I think it's amazing that there's 4 old men from the UK going out to smash 1,000 miles on paddleboards and hopefully inspire others to think about doing something like this or the River Quest or any other race, be it the North Broads Ultra, the Head of the Dart, whatever. So whilst it is competitive, I'm really looking forward to seeing these 2 faces in Whitehorse as well, and hopefully the backs of them for not much.
Well, guys, we're all very excited. We'll keep the coverage going. We'll keep monitoring things as far as we can while you're actually on the water and trying to keep the content coming. And hopefully we can have a chat with you both in Whitehorse when you're there and also afterwards once you're back and recuperating. But thanks ever so much for joining us. It's been a really fun chat, and all the best for the race.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Simon. Simon. Cheers.
Good luck, the Moose to Rooster hunters.
You've been listening to the third episode of our mini-season where we deep dive into the Yukon 1000, the longest paddle race in the world. And next week, we're speaking to teams on the start line from Whitehorse, Yukon.